Hi, welcome to the Light Reading Podcast. I'm Kelsey Zeiser. I'm a senior editor at Light Reading, and I'm joined by
Gabriel Brown. I'm an analyst with Heavy Reading, sort of the market research division of Light Reading, but we're also a part of Omdia, one of the world's largest tech industry research firms.
Nice. Well, good to have you on, Gabe. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, good to be here. We're going to talk about 5G standalone, right?
Right. And I thought just to provide a little background before we get really into your research and what you're seeing in 5G standalone, for those who may not be familiar, can you give kind of a 101 on what's the difference between non-standalone 5G and 5G standalone? And is one better or more, significant than the other?
Yeah, good one. So I'm pretty buzzed to talk about it, but got quite a bit to get into. I think in simple terms, it's 5G SA standalone. It's where 5G can operate without a dependency on the legacy 4G, if you can put it that way. It's the sort of the full architecture of 5G, so across the RAN, the core, and the devices, and it brings new capabilities we could get into. It's kind of strategic as well to network evolution, to further steps in how our mobile networks evolve. It kind of unlocks quite a lot of things. If we think in sort of chess move terms, we also have the 6G architecture studies just started in 3GPP. So, that's some way out, but they're kind of interrelated as maybe we'll get to. Now, is it better? That's the key question. And is it better, and how do you show that, and how do you sell it, and so forth? I think it's a bit like cameras, right? The best network is the one that you actually can use. So it sort of depends, right? If the best camera is the one you have with you. It's a little bit like that. Certainly it shows up as better. SA shows us better in the stats, in the sort of latency, the downloads, the uploads, all that kind of thing. Will you notice it as a smartphone user? I think that's kind of less clear. You're not going to notice a few milliseconds of difference, right, on your phone. But I think incrementally we're going to see basically better service. So whether that is, it express itself in quite a few different ways: reliability, less hangs, just a better, more consistent experience. And I think that'll show a little bit over time. I guess think about, right, say you get into a 10 or 20-year-old car, even if it's brand new condition, versus one you get into today, you're going to notice the difference, right? Things have moved on, and I think it'll be a little bit like that. We won't necessarily do it all in one jump. Or if you take a 5-year-old iPhone versus a brand new phone, that's when you realize the progress. So I think it'll probably end up being a little like that.
Yeah, I think the car that's a really helpful example because you might have an older car that's more or less reliable, but definitely doesn't have all the compute power or kind of bells and whistles that a newer car might have. And it sounds like 5G SA would be even more important in applications where low latency is an issue. Is that correct?
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
Or does it kind of depend?
all these things depend. It's always the way. I mean, it is in theory a little bit better latency, and it depends on the scenario and things like that. So I wouldn't sort of just peel out that one thing. That is a sort of a part of the benefits, really.
So, what are you seeing in terms of industry progress for deploying 5G SA? Where are we at in scaling up?
Yeah, so that is a great question, and it's kind of thing I'm sort of a little bit hanging my hat on to some extent. It's probably fair to say, on an industry basis, SA has been a little slow to roll out. That depends a lot on your expectations. The industry is kind of oversupplied in bad news and negativity as well. I think it's almost braver now to make a positive call on the sector and what's going on. But to me, it looks like we're turning a corner on SA. I mean, 5G's been in the market 5 years, let's say, roughly speaking. And in advanced markets, so we can separate different market types, I think 5G is really set to scale pretty well, pretty strongly over the next 5 years. By which I mean more devices operating predominantly in SA mode in the network. Now, quite the numbers and things we still don't have a clear view on, but it's pretty positive, and a good number of signals as to why I think that.
Yeah, and so tell us a little bit more about what your research is revealing in terms of, also which of those regions are ahead in terms of deploying 5G SA.
Well, so one of the things is we know SA is very doable. Like the big Chinese operators have been running it at scale for some years. T-Mobile US has been running it nationwide, mass scale for a good few years. Geo in India, again, running a huge network, SA only, and all doing it very well. So it's certainly something you can do, right? It's got its challenges, but we know, we have evidence it's doable. I think what's kind of making me think it's going to get a little bit more sort of a broader adoption. Certainly, we've seen things like vendor results have been reasonably positive the last year, and certainly a few quarters. Nokia and Ericsson in their reporting for core have had a uptrend. Omdia, my colleagues at Omdia who cover core infrastructure, they have it as mobile core as a 5% growth market this year. That's in a telco equipment market that's flat to down. We recently completed our 5G core operator survey. It's the third time I've run it over the past good few years. Available for free on the Light Reading website if anyone wants to download it. But about 35% of our respondents to the survey said their company's already now live nationwide with SA. 20% will be by the end of the year. So we're talking a majority by that point. And then a whole bunch of kind of anecdata and news flow that's kind of putting the picture together a little bit. Like in the UK here, we have EE, which is, I suppose, the lead carrier. They launched last year at some point. They're now aiming to be the best SA network in Europe. They just hit 50% population coverage, and we've got a pretty good roadmap to scale much wider. We had Geo in India, I think, last week or the week before. They announced that they're already live on SA. They announced they now have 10 network slice types available in commercial operations. That's a way of differentiating service. Just after I put my blog and my LinkedIn post up and things, there was a comment from Jeremy Legg, who's the CTO at AT&T, who said at an investor conference, we now have millions of customers on SA. Been lots of breadcrumbs from AT&T that was going pretty well. They've been sort of leading us to this view, but nevertheless, at an investor conference where it's all on the record and so forth, it's a good sort of signal that they're comfortable in communicating how scaling is going. Rakuten announced its vendor selections. This is all news from the past few weeks, right? So we're putting a picture together. And even in you're asking about regions as well. Another news piece I saw, Vodacom in South Africa has done its first calls and so forth. So it's a little earlier in the game, but certainly happening there. And Standalone in South Africa would be a good example of a market that it's not in the leading group, but certainly it's coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely a lot of momentum across the board. And you mentioned, T-Mobile. It seems like they've been kind of at the forefront in the U.S. For 5G SA, and sounds like AT&T is ready to make some significant announcements there as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it. And obviously, we're going to get Verizon, and they're doing the same thing. I think they're doing it a little quietly before it comes out. Mm-hmm. One thing I thought about Verizon is quite good. You wrote that story the other week. Hi-Fi about these flood sensors that kind of look at water levels and are on the 5G network according to the press release. So I couldn't really pick out from the public information whether they are a RedCap device, so RedCap is reduced capability. It's a 5G IoT device that can only run on standalone. It wasn't 100% clear from all the materials that it is a RedCap device, but it's that kind of a use case where you're doing flood detection. You don't really want, the flaky part of that monitoring system to be the network. That 5G SA using RedCap would be a really good solution, for example. So there's a ton of that going on as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. That was a interesting story of how they're using that for, in in light of global warming to track floodwaters and hopefully give some information in advance and map out regions in terms of how waters are rising so people can prepare in advance for floodwaters. But yeah, that's a good point about whether or not it's RedCap. That wasn't uh, super clear, but would be interesting to see if that's the case.
Yeah, it's
And
exactly the
then
type of
I
use
think that
case, right?
right, exactly. I think that kind of dovetails well into uh, some of your research as well into asking folks what's the most important driver for 5G core investment at their companies. What did you find there? What are some of their top priorities?
I mean, the top priority, I forget the exact number, but it's 40 odd percent or something, was, we just want to offer new and better services. So it's a kind of associated with an evolution in your service portfolio. But also, there's a lot of secondary reasons that would come into it. So, for example, be part of a modernization play, or if you're doing some consolidation after M&A. There's a whole bunch of reasons, but primarily it's about being able to innovate in your service portfolio, I would say.
Yeah, it sounds like at the top, I'm just looking at the graph from your blog, which we'll include in the show notes as well, so folks can go dig into that research more. But yeah, it said 41% are new or better services, for example, RedCap slicing, priority access location, advanced FWA, etc. Also looks like people were kind of split at 17% in terms of 17% said part of our standard mobile core refresh and modernization cycle was most important. And then another 17% said superior mobile broadband experience. So
Yeah,
that's pretty interesting.
there's a ton in underneath that we can sort of get into. I mean, the you know mobile cores are going to get refreshed on a sort of rolling basis anyway. So at that point, there's a kind of a view that you move to SA just for that reason, because you're doing it. And it gets quite complicated because of different strategies. Do you port over your legacy 4G core to a new platform? Do you continue to run that for a longer time? It's quite a mix of options, and operators doing quite different things in that area. Like, definitely, there's a case for you're running LTE mobile broadband. Uh, the ARPU is not amazing on it, or it's working. Just leave well alone, sort of thing. And there's definitely operators doing that as well. And that's there's not a wrong strategy.
Mm-hmm. And I just have kind of a side question too. Another thing I'm seeing a lot about is 5G Advanced, and I think RedCap's a component of that as well. What's the difference between 5G Advanced and 5G SA? Are they the same?
So they're like a continuum, really. SA is the full architecture. 5G Advanced is the later releases. I think releases 18 and 19, really. And so it's basically, to do it 5G Advanced, you've got to do SA first, if you can put it in those terms. 5G Advanced is going to basically build on a lot of what came into SA. It has a mixture of kind of new service capability, capacity gains, and so forth. There's a fair bit in it. Let's take RedCap. We've mentioned that already as an example. So RedCap is originally a part of SA. It's deployed, but there's a thing called eRedCap or Enhanced or Evolve RedCap, I forget which is 5G Advanced, which is even smaller. Using a smaller, lower power module effective. It's actually Apple, I think, that first kind of introduced that into 3GPP, and they haven't said it explicitly, but I think the logic is, well, we have these low-end modules for different types of devices, but maybe we need something for a smartwatch, right? Because they're still on LTE for the most part, So it's sort of incremental improvement through 5G Advanced.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, that's helpful. And then what are some of the challenges that you're seeing to further deployments of 5GSA? What is there anything that's halting that scaling up?
I think we're in a pretty good place. Like, this is why I think we are set to scale pretty nicely. Like, the RAN is in a good. You need a really good RAN to do this. You need the telco cloud infrastructure to run your core. Operators lead operators anyway have now deployed that. It works, it functions, it's resilient, it's reliable. That's been a lot of effort. It's a big lift. We're getting the in the higher end devices are compatible and are launching. We're starting to see the modules for different IoT devices. I think it's really about now is sort of, I guess, where we started the discussion, communicating the user benefits, identifying them, communicating them, creating sort of service packages, things like that. Like, how are you going to actually make this tangible and useful to either on the enterprise side or the consumer side? And by the way, I think both enterprise and consumer have a lot of play here. So you're going to have to somehow bundle this capability in some form of a service package, probably initially. That's kind of how it's going. Like, high end tends to be high end new phones, like new iPhones, new Galaxies, new Pixels, those types of things are getting kind of packaged up with whatever service the operator or the phone maker makes, whether it's an AI service running on a network slice, running on an SA network, for example, is one way. But there, a bunch of things like that. How it's put into a customer offer. I think that needs some work. And then on the consumer side, particularly, I think at the moment, and it depends on the market, what you get SA when you take a new plan, right? And it's a 24-month plan or 36 months people are doing now, and you buy a new phone and everything's new and it's great and you're locked in. And that's fine. That's, I know in America, that's probably the preferred model. Other countries, you can do that, but the for example, I like to buy my own phone on spec and then take a SIM only contract with the operator, for example. Now, if I do that today, I won't get SA because they're not comfortable giving it out to any device because they haven't tested it and so forth. It's still a bit new. But I think for this to really scale into sort of truly into the mass market, we're going to need operators to support some kind of SIM only type package as well. And I think it's going to take a little time to get there because they are a bit nervous. The whole point of SA is to be better than anything you've ever had before. So they're taking their time and, working through that. But I think that's still a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point you made about how they're presenting it to consumers and using it to support other services that might be more front-facing or apparent to consumers, like AI on devices, making those types of applications work better. Because I think the average consumer just kind of looks at their phone. Is it working or not working? And is there lag? But they might not be as aware of the full benefits, I suppose, of 5G SA for running their device. And
I think to be fair, I mean, I know loads of people who they don't care that much about their phone or their network. They just want to look stuff up, and it's not like a huge deal for them really. So that's the clear reality, right? People are running 3, 4, 5-year-old phones, no problem, and more or less happy with it. So that is the sort of market context, especially in consumer. But there is a segment who want the best stuff, who want the good stuff, and over time, anyway, those people coming off a 5-year-old phone and renewing are going to be sort of ported into the new world, as it were, whether they like it or not to some extent.
Right.
And yet, maybe times there will be a package put together. Like if you want, lots of operators are already bundling now these AI subscriptions, for example. And I think honestly, we've scratched the surface of what that could be like. I mean, at the moment, these chat LLMs, they're quite easy on the network, right? They're all the latency, if you like, in the application is in the compute, in the think time. So the network's obviously doing its job, no problem. But you could easily imagine as things get much more interactive, or as you start sending video feeds up or something like that, you're going to need to have a much more reliable, resilient network. Certainly if we go to things like smart glasses, where you're having to do some split, many types of places where at the moment, you're happy. You just look up your football scores and your bus times and, check the news. That's where we are today. But there's a bunch of stuff I think that will come in the service realm that's going to make a kind of, resilient, reliable, high performance network worth it.
Right. Yeah, I think we've just consumers are still, at least in the U.S., still kind of learning the AI on device, how they can really utilize that more, and as they do, that'll probably change demand on the network as well. And uh, just to wrap up, wanted to get your thoughts on what's next for 5G SA. Is it an important precursor to 6G? What are your thoughts on what we can look forward to next with 5G SA?
Yeah, so that's a super good question, and very kind of top of mind, I think, for a lot of people in like standardization or forward-looking kind of network architecture. So we're going to talk about 5G Advanced. I mentioned that the 6G architecture study is underway in 3GPP. I think that just started off in June or very recently this summer. That's going to run about a year or so, and they're looking at, well, what's the 6G architecture going to be like? There was a big plenary meeting again in April this year, and basically what we don't know, because it's a study and there's going to be movement, and we don't really know. It's due to want to preempt things, but basically the strong sort of sentiment that I'm picking up is 6G is going to be more or less, well, first of all, the big desire is that 6G is going to be standalone from day one, right? And it's going to be a single
That's huge.
architecture only. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of kind of people have sort of, looked at the 5G experience and gone, let's not do it quite that way again. And we'll go 6G standalone from day one, single architecture only is the sort of guiding mantra. Now, from there, well, your day one standalone, so you need a core network. Now, what is that core network going to look like then? At the moment, and I've reserved the right to sort of change my mind and things, but at the moment, it looks like it's going to be an extension of the 5G core, everything we've just been talking about. So there isn't a huge appetite to go and replace all of that again. So I think it will have some new functions, but there are two areas. I think, for one thing, the telco cloud infrastructure that operators are putting in is, that itself is going to evolve over the next 5 years. So it's not going to stay static, but that basic infrastructure sort of platform or paradigm is going to carry forward and take, that investment is going to support a 6G introduction. Then we have all the 5G network functions, the core network functions. A good number of them are still getting built out, right? There's quite a lot of build out still to go there. It looks like many of them will be reusable for 6G, so why not reuse them? If we think about these things like these developer APIs that everyone's talking about, right? If you're a developer, you don't want everything to change over the next. You want some sort of consistency. So there's an idea that the network that underpins that will be somewhat consistent as you go forward. But there's new things in 6G. There's a chance to do things better, easier, and so there will be a few new functions. That's what we're trying to figure out, and most likely that's going to be some of the basic kind of session and mobility management functions. So how you actually set up a device, what it does in idle mode, how you hand over while you're moving, things like that will probably need an upgrade. It looks like that will primarily be like a software function. So it's not going to be a heavy CapEx lift. So kind of brings me back to why I'm focused on this. I think it's all these near terms issues we've been talking about, but also it's a kind of it's a carry forward through to sort of next generation as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect place to leave it. And I'll be looking forward to more research from you and more insights in terms of how things are going with 5G SA and into 6G. And like I said, we'll include your blog and access to that report in the show notes. Gabe, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, nice one, Kelsey. It's great to be back on your podcast. It's a long time. Yeah. I can't remember last time I was on, but thanks for having me.
I know. We'll do it again soon. We'll have you back on next week. No, but soon.
All right. Cool.
Okay. Thanks, Gabe.